Welcome to 50/50 Books, the book review podcast where the books are split into, and figuring out just what is going on is a toss-up. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jonathan. This episode we are finishing up Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. Well, Taylor, I have to say off the bat that I am feeling a bit complicated about this book. What are your general feelings now that we're at the end?
Yeah, I mean, it's always exciting to read a book and be right about it, because let me say, this book was
Yeah.
not a toss-up. I had that shit figured out.
Yeah.
You also had some great theories.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. But yeah, I was reading it and I was like, oh shit, like Taylor had this. Like it was done.
Yeah, so that boosted my excitement as I was reading. And there were some good parts in this, but yeah, I agree with you. It's complicated. Sometimes I wonder if I'm a little bit too woke. But I don't know. I don't know with this one.
Yeah, I think, as we have the conversation we're going to have today, like, we are critical readers, right? And I don't just mean that in a, like, nitpicky way, but, like, we're thinking about, implications and, bigger picture things when we're reading. And I think maybe this book was going for that, too, in which case it did the job. But more than anything, I think this book feels very, like... I was going to say comprehensive, but that's not the right word because some of these characters are not fleshed out enough for that. But it does like dive into a lot of, I don't know, different details that it maybe didn't even have to. Like, I think the first half of the book, I was almost complaining that it felt like it was going very slow, right? Like I was looking for more of that plot advancement and stuff. And then the second half really does get into it. It really moves things along. But there's so many stories to move along. So I guess the point of this in simple terms is there's a lot going on in this book. And that's informing, I think, some of the complicated feelings. It's like the plot had to go along and it kind of had to make its point, but on the other hand, it kind of introduces some complicated topics.
Yeah, I almost got the impression that, like, the beginning of this book felt kind of like a character-driven book, right? Like, we got a lot of backstory, a lot of exposition about different characters, which can be a good thing. We've had trouble in the past with too many characters, not enough depth, right? And I think that hits a little bit here as well. But then for the second half, to your point, it's, we're moving the plot along. It almost feels like it flips into a plot-driven book, right? Like, the characters don't matter so much. They kind of come and go when they're needed. But, yeah, we kind of skip over a lot of those themes we set up in the first half, almost.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, too, that there really are so many characters in this book, but, like, not just my complaint about there being too many characters in the first half was really just because there were a great deal of side characters who were introduced who like don't really have a long-term impact on the story. Like there's the Owen character who actually gets brought up pretty early in this half of the book, who I think his like larger impact on the book is pretty minimal, but like is a recurring side character, right? So like it was things like that where I was like, man, there's like too much to track here. But actually, frankly, there's maybe too many main characters too, right? Like there's not just like, it's not just the three families, which is already plenty of people, but like there's so much extension to that. And there's like Margot and like that family, and there's Rita, right? And the Dawn character. Like there's just so many other characters in addition. So
Yeah, and it is that exposition problem, right? Of like, you have all these characters. Do you need to explain each and every one of them, right? Like, would there have been a loss to this book if, for example, we didn't get the backstory on the Margot family, right? Like,
right.
Would there be anything missing from the narrative for that? Not particularly, I think. If we were able to still get the impression that there was maybe something magical about Joe and Jonathan, that's enough. But yeah, we didn't necessarily need to set up like a whole story about them.
Yeah, and maybe
in the beginning.
I don't want to knock it too much for that because I did kind of like the vibe it set for the book with that, and also, I gave the Over the Garden Wall mention last episode. The other thing I was thinking it reminded me of was Into the Woods because there's so many characters. But anyway, like I liked the setting portion of that. However, it like did end up being misleading as I had suspected, though. So it's like, yeah, and we introduced this whole like vibe setting thing of like maybe there's like fable vibes, maybe there's magic, mystery, whatever you want to call it here. But at the end of the day, who knows if that was accurate? Like, is that really the vibe it should have been setting? Like, is this really a fantastical magic kind of vibe?
Yeah, it's kind of like how much you prioritize atmosphere, I guess, right? Like a book that's just about its atmosphere is that enough to like carry a book? I don't know. I like or
Yeah. I think if it felt like it paid off more, right? That's maybe what's missing is like, why go through the effort of all of that if the book really does lean more on historical fiction, right? Like if that's really supposed to be the vibe, it didn't set that per se. A little bit, it's in the 1800s, and I don't know. There's like some comments where you're like, this is definitely the past, but like it didn't feel like the primary vibe was the historical fiction. It felt like the primary vibe was this kind of fantasy magic feeling, and that just doesn't really stick.
There's just like enough for it to still be mysterious, but there is really no payoff, I guess. Which is fine. Like if you're trying to keep like the spooky fable atmosphere where it could be real, it could not be real. I guess it does that. I don't know.
I'll tell you what though, like thinking of the second half as a mystery helps me out.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think, I don't often say this version of this comment. I think splitting this book in half did this book a great service because I think like having this mental distinction between the first half and the second half really helped me lean in to the second half as kind of a mystery, even though I wouldn't say it's a mystery that gets resolved per se, right? But kind of leaning into like, we're investigating, we're figuring out, like things are being revealed, like that, all that stuff was like cool and fun. It's just not the vibe that was introduced at the start.
For sure. Yeah, it does feel like two separate books almost, right?
Yeah.
Like the first half character driven but also very heavy on that atmosphere, right? And then the second half is I guess the more logical thinking, right? And the solving of the mystery that you mentioned. And so like we don't spend a lot of time kind of building upon the atmosphere we set up, but we also can't really dismantle it entirely.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's just kind of in a weird, I don't know, in between.
Yeah, well, I guess
don't know.
let's piece that sort of magic bit apart a little bit more. Particularly, yeah, we have a few instances. Like one is this kind of eye situation with Bess, like maybe magic, maybe not. There's a mention of dragons. Like what of these situations, of these potential magic situations, do we think are suggestive of real magic and not, or like do we think none of it is magic? Like what's the vibe you're getting?
I mean, I'm convinced there is magic. Maybe that's just what I want to think of the world, though, right? Like, and I mean, like, the general world. Like, you have so many coincidences that fall into place with the whole end of this book. Armstrong seeing quietly and then quietly appearing with his daughter, Armstrong having seen the kid, Jonathan having seen the kid. Like, there's a lot of things that line up towards the end of the book where you're like, all of these things are happening, and it's supposed to be coincidence. Like, I don't think so. But also, they could be, right? It all could be hallucinations or fabrications.
Yeah, like Rita kind of calls out the best one as like, I don't believe that, right? Like there's some of them that kind of get logicked away.
Yeah, and I just think because I know this is fiction, I'm just more inclined to believe there's magic. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. I think the strongest contender for me is things that come via Jonathan. So this is like him having seen the girl and her saying something. And I guess seeing the ferryman along with that too. Like I think that is the most believable. Outside of that, it's like I almost don't want to believe the girl herself was magical. Like I think there was kind of an off implication that maybe she just is one of the river people, right? But I don't, it doesn't really land there either, so I'm not sure. But like that seems so much more believable to me than like the fact that she was magic. Like it like maybe she was truly just missing from her people for a year and then they came back around and found her, right? And Jonathan just saw her getting picked up and just kind of either imagined the spoken part, or she just like, I don't know, was back with her people, so she was willing to speak. Though I also don't know if they would speak the same language, but
Right, because it's, I mean, around that time that Joe is dying, and so there's discussion of quietly, right? Like, people are probably bringing up his name. I think Joe himself even mentions quietly, so it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for Jonathan to also just be repeating that story,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, he's seeing quietly because everybody is mentioning quietly.
I just think so many things land in the logical part, like the storyline in the end, and there's this almost like scientific nature to Rita, right? Of figuring out like this is how cold water affects humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I just think everything is almost meant to come to logical ending, even, and for that matter, I should say too, like the girl actually being one of the river people and this being the answer to that does kind of leave an option for that to not be magical. Honestly, the only one where I'm like, is there an option for this to not be magical is maybe the dragon situation, no?
Yeah, I was just or the dragons, I was just reading that as like a girl who had almost died in a fire,
Right.
seeing, I don't know, birds or something in the sky and thinking
Totally.
it was dragons, right?
Yep, that's true. Yeah. There's definitely other explanations.
Yeah. I will say for the part of like the river people, it does get mentioned towards the end of like there's the story of the girl having been part of the river people, but the people at the Swan didn't like that story, right?
Right,
And so
right.
it is important to mention like the kind of meta part of this book in which it is a story being told by like a specific narrator.
Mm-hmm.
So the things they choose to tell and like the magic they might insert into the narrative is there because it makes a better story, right? So everything can very much be logicked away. It just doesn't sound as good.
Yeah, and there's I guess a couple moments too where like there's some evidence that the ferryman is doing what they claim the ferryman does, right? Like kind of delivering people to the shore and such. And maybe that is, we still don't really know what ends up being the reason that Daunt and the girls survive what they go through at the beginning. So I can see a good argument that if there is like kind of a magic being in this book, that the ferryman would make sense.
Yeah, but then that's also like a will-o-wisps, right? Like you have fires in the forest that like lead people out when they're lost, but is it that that's happening, or are people believing it because they've heard that happens,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like what is feeding into what? So are people almost drowning in this river and somehow getting out, and because they were dazed and almost dead, they think of quietly?
Right, right. They've kind of been primed for it.
Yeah. So like yeah, all of this can be explained non-magically. It really is just a matter of what do you want to hear.
I guess I'm just like old and not fun because I really am like not bought into the magic.
I think I will buy into the magic. Mostly because I love a boatman. So just for that alone, I would buy into it.
Yeah. It would, I guess, fit too into some things we talked about in our first episode of this book of, we're, I guess, trying to figure out who this girl is or like represents. And like, I think, it would line up well with what we were talking about if she is just Quietly's actual daughter and not like just a daughter of a river person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, you could even argue that in a sense she did have kind of the essence of the other girls, if that's the case, kind of projected. But at the very least, she would be then, yeah, Quietly's daughter, kind of coming to serve a purpose and then being taken back when her purpose is done.
The thing with the girl, if it's like logical, then it's she was there and then she was gone. There's no explanation, right? Which is fine. But if it's magical and it is Quietly's daughter, then it is a question of like, why is she there, right? Like the purpose you mentioned. Like, what is the purpose then?
I think the only thing I can think of is that all of these folks have touched the river,
Mm-hmm.
so Quietly is aware, and maybe and presumably that's enough, right? Like Quietly is maybe aware of their all of their lives and like what's happening here, and like sees a role for himself, I guess, or a role for his daughter in this case.
Mm-hmm. I was almost thinking of it like Quietly is supposedly there to take people when it's their time. And so having the daughter come around is so that she can incite that time. So they can bring Amelia back. So Alice is found eventually. And so Victor and Robin meet their end and justice is served, if that's how we want to accept justice.
I could see an extension of that with the Vaughns too, of trying to bring them closure to their story. Like, presumably, their daughter is supposed to be on the other side, the quote other side, right? But yet they are like not past it yet, right? And I mean, Mrs. Vaughn has not been given that opportunity really, but like they're not past it. They haven't acknowledged that yet, so it kind of allows them to it kind of allows that crossing to be totally done.
So it's just like, yeah, the culmination of all of these things have to line up perfectly, and all these characters have to cross at this specific time so that closure can meet all of them.
Right.
And that's Quietly, and that's his daughter. That would be the vibe I would get from like the magical angle.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that has to be inferred. That's like one of the only
Yeah.
things not told to us very directly
For
by this
sure.
book.
I mean, just like that ending was a little fuzzy, I think, too.
Yeah.
Maybe intentionally. I actually have to say I didn't particularly like the way it ended because it was a bit too fuzzy for my liking.
Well, I think the last chapter is literally called Happily Ever After. So it is very like sweeping, this happened and then this happened and everybody was happy. And it's like, well, okay then, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's fine. It's really like I think more maybe it was in that chapter, but I think it might have been more in the chapter before where it kind of addresses the ideas of what happened to the girl. I think it's like that tie up I don't like.
Oh, okay, okay.
I think there's, I there's time and place for ambiguous endings. It's not that I don't like ambiguous endings. It's just felt like, I don't know, we went through a lot of winding path to get here. Like I wanted something.
Yeah, this is an interesting point. I think it'll lead into something we'll talk about later of just like this girl not being a girl, basically. She really does just serve as a purpose, a device here.
Yeah, yeah.
But let's not get too in the weeds about her right now,
totally,
I
totally.
guess.
I guess we brought up one theory from the last episode. There was another one that you had as well, if you want to revisit that.
Yes, well, it was a couple theories, but wrapped up neat in a bow was I thought Robin and Victor somehow knew each other, somehow were working together. I suspected the Maud kidnapping was Victor. That turned out to be true. And then I was also like, you know what, I'll go out on a limb here and I'll say Victor and Robin also probably kidnapped Amelia. And you know what? I was fucking right about that too.
Yeah.
The only thing I didn't get was I thought Amelia and Alice were the same person, possibly. And I thought Robin's wife maybe was involved in the plot somehow or something like that. That wasn't really the case.
Yeah, I did honestly too. As I was reading the second half, I thought you were really right about that. So like, I thought it was going to go that direction, but then yeah, the actual what happens to their daughter is revealed, and it's like, all right, I guess that was probably they probably actually have an Alice, and they did.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing I guess is also Victor is apparently Robin's father, which
yeah, holy shit.
Yeah, crazy curveball there, to be honest.
Yeah, I think reading the second half, I was like, well, all of the things were there, like, right? I think this is not often the case, and so I truly shout out to this author for doing it this way, because not everyone does. I think all of the elements were there to figure this book out, and you really did just kind of have to do the job of putting it together, which is no small feat. And so, like, reading, whenever we'd get new information, as crazy as it is that Victor is his dad, it's like, no, but it's there, right? Like, Lily and the parson, right, have this whole conversation about age. I think we may even brought it up last episode. They have this whole conversation about age to like really set how old Lily is, which then kind of comes with the implication of how old Victor is. That kind of gets confirmed more when we figure out that it's the stepbrother, right? And like how they were similar in age when that happened, when the families came together. And so like it's like stacking up for you that they have this age gap, and there's kind of this shady character business going on that maybe can be attributed to Victor, maybe could be attributed to Robin. And so like you just kind of have to marry those two ideas together. And eventually I think you could land at the age gap also explaining who the actual father is. And like, especially the part where I was like, I should have gotten it here was when Armstrong, the greater, Robert, notices or recognizes Victor's name.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if Robert remembered that because Victor Nash was at the Green Dragon. I was like, is that why he recognizes that name? Like, I could not remember. But yeah, if you're paying close enough attention, you could figure something out, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I was surprised. I was enthused.
Yeah,
it was exciting.
It was exciting. I agree. It was like wild. But also it was like a little bit of a gotcha to Robin, who's being like a total pain in the ass.
I know. And then I guess like another barrier in my mind for the Robin Victor thing is I just never assume that two evil characters have to be related. Right. I guess is the other thing, right? I am big on nurture over nature.
Totally. Okay, yes. Yeah, let's get into it, because this book is a little weird for that, right? Like,
yes.
I don't think you could have used the fact that they were both kind of villainous characters as good evidence for them being related. Because, yeah, it doesn't kind of make a lot of sense, and I don't know if I like what it implies about, evil traveling through genes, right? Like, that seems a little bit weird. But that's like a little bit of what I think you're supposed to do here, right? Like, they are the evil characters. It turns out they are secretly related.
Right.
And I would say that Robin's evilness comes before Victor is an element of his life too.
Yeah, he seems to have a history of it. And of course, there's like going to be like genetics and psychopathy being passed down
Sure,
and blah
sure.
blah 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 blah. But like with this kind of time period, with this kind of vibe, it is really like it's inevitable that he is evil. So we're just kind of like Oedipus Rexing this entire situation.
Right.
And it's also hard to like pinpoint. Like to your point,
Mhm.
Robin is up to no good from a young age, it seems. And it does seem out of place because Robert is shown to be a loving father, but something we mentioned in the first episode is like gentle parenting is not the answer here. Like discipline is required. So there's that factor. And then Bess on the other side of this, it's entirely possible that she might be a bit biased against Robin, which is fair. Robin was conceived due to rape,
Right.
so it's a difficult situation for her to be in.
Yeah, she did say some things that kind of kind of argue against that though, almost, right? Where she's like, "Well, I was bound to love him. He's my kid," you know. Like I think she's maybe got some inconsistencies in how she feels about this, but she does like she kind of gets called out by Robert for treating him differently, which like I kind of don't stand for this bullshit because like it almost sounds like Robert's blaming her for it, but like she does treat him differently than the rest, even though she kind of claims that she would love him just because she's her own biological child. And then meanwhile, I feel like Robert is like he does the opposite, right? Like he's like going too far, or he's like, I need to love this child extra because of his origins, and then like isn't a parent, right? He just becomes like a sort of indiscriminate supporter of him, and that backfires too. So like both of them kind of screw it up. Like they overthink it.
Yeah. Bess's gets like almost not dismissed, but like because of her eye possibly being magic, like it feels like she's justified in her apathy almost of like his behavior. Like I know his true character because I've seen it, right? So she's able to kind of dismiss him and like dismiss her guilt about how he's turned out. I guess.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
But yeah, there is kind of that conflict of this idolized idea of motherhood in this book and like that traditional nonsense that's happening here that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Um
Oh yeah, even when Robin's being a pain in the ass, he's like, "Well, if mom was a better mom, I'd be a better kid." Like,
oh my god.
God.
And even if she doesn't realize it, she might have a bias against him
Yeah, yeah.
that she's not willing to kind of like her as a mother she wants to say I will love him no matter what, right? But then this is a very difficult topic that obviously this book is not going to get into very much. But like, yeah, if he's more like his father, if he looks more like his father, are you going to judge him as if he was his father, right? Like,
It kind of does go back to this question then, right? Like of if this really has to do with the fact that Victor was his well, of course it has to do with the fact that Victor was his father, but like from a genetic point or not, right? Because is it really that Victor was his father and he passed on his evil genes, right? Or is it that he was treated totally differently as a child because they knew Victor was his father? And that like led them to just be these kinds of not, I don't know, complete parents. Maybe this is side effects, right? I think they touch on the fact, at least with Robert being soft, they're like, well, this certainly could be a side effect of that, but maybe it's even bigger than that, like of just him being soft. Like he was probably raised unlike other kids were raised, and that this is kind of they were in uncharted territory, and then Robin ended up in this kind of path.
it's not so much about the nature, it's that their idea of nurturing is just enforcing the supposed nature, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned like the Robert part of him questioning like, did we do the wrong thing when we were raising him? Was I too soft? Blah 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 blah. And Bess kind of I think it's Bess that dismisses that and is
She does,
like,
yeah.
there's no way for us to know, right? Which is true. There's no way to know. But I feel like having that kind of apathy of like, because she's so sure of who Robin is and like her just allowing herself to pass off her guilt because of that feeling. This is going to be a hot take, but it's like because of that and because they weren't willing to actually parent him, Amelia is dead.
Mm.
This is like a
Well,
weird take, and it's probably a bit too far, but they just like they weren't neglectful. That's not the word I'm looking for, but like
sure.
they were so hands off
Mm-hmm.
in their discipline that it resulted in their son becoming who he was, which resulted in the death of Amelia and the death of Alice's mother, right? And like all of these other people getting hurt because they weren't willing to parent.
Yeah, I think I have two somewhat conflicting takes about this, but one of them is that whether or not they realize it, they disowned Robin. Like they because they did not treat him like their own child, right? The claim here is that, oh, we kept him and we raised him up, so therefore he's our child. But frankly, he wasn't. He kind of raised himself. So to me, they disowned him, and even though Robert like tried to keep up a relationship, like it wasn't even really about that anymore. Because what happened when Robert and Robin ended up in the same place at the same time is Robert just like tried to tell him off, basically. Like he just tried to make his point. Like it's too late for that, right? Like it just wasn't a real interaction anymore between a father and a son. So like to me, like I mean, definitely by the time he's an adult, but I think by the time he was even just a child, they had disowned him. They had not treated him as their own.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, like Robin does become a full independent adult, right? Like and makes all these decisions, and this kind of brings in my other question of like his redeemability, right? Because he like he makes the choice to do all the things he does and get into this sort of life because he feels like he's better than other people and thinks that he deserves a certain path, right? So it goes a lot deeper than just like the parenting at a certain point, right? He's his own human.
Yeah, it's such a weird middle place almost, right? Because yeah, they've disowned him, but also they aren't willing to let him go, right? Like they still give him money.
Yeah. Well, true. They're enabling.
They're enabling him exactly. And they also like aren't honest with him, right? The fact that Robin finds the letter, he presumes wrong that it's about him, but like if they had just been honest about like who Robin's dad was and like what the situation was. I get that this is the 1800s or whatever, but like that would have gone a long way rather than like this weird tension where it seems like your parents don't like you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or like or they're trying too hard in a way that ostracizes you, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's at least a suspicious. That's actually a good point. I didn't even think about that, right? Like, they have kept him in the dark about his own background and also apparently Robert's, right? Like, he doesn't know that his, I guess, adoptive grandfather is this member of royalty because then he assumes that it's his father, right? Like, had he just even known his own presumed familial backgrounds, then that would have never even come up.
yeah, so it's weird. And I understand it's probably difficult for Bess to talk about things like that, which is completely fair, but it does feel like important information for your son to know.
Yeah, and dare I say though that it's Robert's responsibility. Like he kind of signed up for that. Like he knew from the start the whole situation, and in a way he agreed to marry Bess a great deal just to protect her, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would think that with that kind of comes this ability or will at least to have difficult conversations when it makes sense, and it certainly would have made sense by the time Robin was a full adult. So I to me, like he kind of holds the blame for not tackling that sooner.
Yeah. And then just, yeah, continuing with the enabling by giving him money and either let him go or be honest with him, right? You can't just keep him in the dark about everything.
Yeah, and then it kind of made him vulnerable, right? So there's this whole other thing with Victor too, where so he gets into this kind of criminal partnership with Victor, and they do their thing, but then at a certain point he becomes indebted to Victor, right? And like Victor, we've seen with Lily is very manipulative, right? To me, he seemed a bit airheaded, but like when he starts going on his kind of diatribe, I don't know what to call it, with Robin, that's basically like, oh no, boy, you owe me, like this. Your money is mine. Like we're gonna do this together. Like you're trapped with me, effectively, right? Like it's very scary language, and it's like, oh, like no, Victor like knows how to manipulate people and talk them into circles. This is he's been doing it his whole life, and he had the example of his father, right? Does that also kind of, I don't know, give Robin slightly less culpability for his actions? And maybe not the early ones, but the later ones where he's like, well, now I owe Victor, and like he's kind of got me under his control, like Victor victimizes Robin a bit. But like he also started. I don't know how to say this better. Like he started by choosing it, but then it became something else. You know?
Yeah, I think the issue is, I mean, the stuff you've mentioned, right? Robin thinking he's the son of royalty and thinking he deserves more than what he has, right? That ego is the fault of Robin. Victor is just playing into it. The fact that Robin, up until the end of this book, still owns like a fancy house in Oxford, like,
Mm-hmm.
uh, seems to have all of these luxuries still, like, if you're actually in debt and you want to pay it off, maybe you should like sell your house or something. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, he makes everything everyone else's problem. So
Yeah, and Robert tells him, like, if you need the money, you can work on the farm and we can figure something out. And Robin is like, that's beneath me. And like all of this kind of nonsense, right? So, like, it is an issue of his character. It's just like Victor knowing how to play into it.
yeah, yeah, but also like that comes from the enabling from the family side, right? Like again, it's too late for this. For like, oh, you can come work on the farm. Like he expects everything to be handed to him at this point. You can see it in his rants of like, well, if mom just got out of the way and if you just gave me the money, then I wouldn't have to deal with this because I would just have everything I want, which is how it's supposed to be because I'm royalty, right? Like, even without the I'm royalty part, like I think this is just how he's been treated, right? Yeah, they just give him the money when he asks for it. They can't say no to him, and they just let him. They've always let him do whatever he wants. I mean, now he's an adult; they can't stop him from doing what he wants, but they never set him up in the right direction.
It's actually crazy. The first time Robert sees where Robin lives is like because of all of this stuff,
Yeah,
right? Like,
right. They don't have a real relationship. They just expect the letters asking for money, and they like it seemed like it had been years since they had seen each other.
yeah, and it's obviously done out of like guilt, right? Robert wants to be closer, he wants to love him, blah blah blah, but it's like that's not happening.
Well, I feel like all this is to say, like, there's a lot of things that lead Robin to where he is. I kind of still think he's a pain. Like I don't know, I keep calling him a pain, but he's a pain, and like I think he does have the final responsibility, right? And there are certainly things he does where he has full responsibility, like getting involved with Victor to begin with, and therefore with leading to the death of Amelia. Like he does have responsibility for that, and I think he does have responsibility for who he ends up too. But there's context, right? There's things that push him that direction or that make that direction more likely. But I do think it's him, to blame for his own results at the end.
I agree. Yeah.
Kind of like it explains it, but it doesn't excuses it, kind of thing, right?
He could have come clean about it at any point. He continues to make bad choices. The fact that Amelia died and he was the one that said we can still ransom her for money. Like that was him that did that. And then his whole situation with his wife and using her for money, it's just like this is a him issue, right? So, and it could be a mixture of nurture and nature. It doesn't really
Yeah,
matter.
exactly. It doesn't matter at the end of the day.
I think in the context of this book, it's trying to say it's nature
Yeah.
because Bess and Robert are set up as great parents. Especially Robert, I think he's supposed to be like a beacon of warmth
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
this book.
Totally.
But they have their issues, but the book, yeah, definitely goes with the nature aspect of this, I think.
And I think to some degree we do have to we have to make some assumptions about the full raising of Robin, right? We're not around for it. We don't see it all, but we kind of just get these like tidbits about their style and the interactions they have with them now that can kind of lead us to understand the full nature of their parenting style with him. I do think there's kind of an angle that they're just like, oh, they're just good people, but I do think it runs deeper than that.
Yeah. But yeah, everything is kind of set up as nature, as biological. I mean, because you can look at what happens between Lily and Victor, right? And they're siblings, they're family, but they're step siblings, right? And so they're complete opposites.
Yeah.
But that's also men being trash. So it's like it's a little more nuanced on that front, I suppose.
I guess, yeah, and you get the Victor and his dad too, right? Like his dad is also a piece of crap.
An asshole, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess when those sorts of people in the world exist, you may understand why Rita is afraid of childbirth. Though actually, I think hers are biological too. She's got more of a fear of the actual process than the child itself.
Yeah, with her midwife experience.
Yeah, she's seen it all.
Yeah, once you start bleeding and you don't stop, you're dead. You're dead. That's it for you.
She really gives the full like talking about tearing and everything. She's like, this is what it is.
She even gets into like how doctors will tell their husbands not to have sex with their wives for a bit, but not why, right? They won't explain why you can't have sex with your wife.
There's a whole thread in there about like just protecting men from what happens, right? And like they are not even like allowed in the room and such, right? Just totally like, nope, we can't make men go through this for some reason.
Oh my gosh, and that plays big into our next topic of conversation, but
Yeah.
we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Yes, we won't get ahead. Yeah.
But yeah, Rita was our favorite character. Is she still our favorite character?
I think so. I think it wasn't quite a strong second half. She gets a little less like I don't know, stage time in the way she got the first half. Second half, there's a lot of Daunt, right? So it changes her character a little bit. But I think she's still my favorite.
Do I think she's still my favorite?
Yeah, did
Honestly,
she break
I
your
don't know
heart?
a little bit. Yeah, she really was giving Arrow ace vibes. Newsflash, that doesn't stay around.
Yeah.
It is really just like she is afraid of having children because of the physical ramifications, which is completely fair. But sometimes it's nice to just have a character that doesn't want to have children because she doesn't want to have children.
Like, frankly, the reason shouldn't even matter, right? Sure, like she doesn't want to do the physical part. Great. End of story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
why?
yeah.
Like, why does there need to be a fixing?
Yeah, but it feels like the second half of this book, wrapping up her character, giving her closure, if we're giving everybody closure, is really just she needs to get over it. Is really what her character arc is, right?
Yeah.
Because we kind of have her closeness with Helena, and the Quietly's daughter isn't their daughter, but like Rita still feels something maternal, and not just like heartbreak. It's like her womb feels hollow, right? As if she had given birth to Quietly's daughter herself, right? So it's still all tied in very like to the biological aspect of it all rather than just the emotional aspect.
This is where I'm like, what is the reason for Quietly's daughter being around, supposing it is her? Like, is it to convince everyone they should have a kid? Because that seems to be the effect she has on everyone, right? It is this like I want to try. I mean, I think it kind of affects Daunt too, and that leads to this, right? But I think everyone has this feeling of like, I want to take this child home, and that's why I thought she was like a source of magic. Like, how do I better say this? Like, is this child the heterosexual agenda?
I mean, kind of. I mean, in the very beginning, we get that one guy, Owen or whatever. He sees the girl, and then he goes and gets married.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, it's just heteronormative nonsense is what we're going with here. And then, yeah, we get comments from people like Robert, and it's like, oh, getting married, having kids, having your family, it's like the greatest joy in your life. And it's like, brother, give me a break over here.
Was he talking to Rita about it? He was like, you have to get married, basically. He's like, you have to get married. Like, it's just the only way to like experience this level of happiness. Like, you have to get married. So I think that was less about having a kid, but I think that was the implication too, right? So it's just like,
that's
yeah,
the
like
package.
this. Yeah, like I think it's just this typical stuff we hear of like, yeah, like the only way to live a fulfilling and happy life is to get married and have children. It's just, I don't know, it's old school. They're in the 1800s, I get it, but I'm like, I don't know. Also, why are we writing about it? Maybe because it's such a vital part of this book too.
It's a big part, yeah, and yeah, it's the 1800s, so it's difficult, but the fact that we reach a point in the relationship between Rita and Daunt where they're like, we can't interact with each other because we love each other, because that means we would have to get married and have kids. It's like, is that really what we're going with here?
Gosh,
like,
you know what? There was like such a healthy thing happening in this book, right? Where like, Rita made clear her intentions, and Daunt was like, I mean, he pushed a tiny bit, right? He was like, here's what I want. And she's like, I don't want that. And he's like, are you sure? And she's like, I definitely don't want that. And he's like, okay. And he was like, well, she's not going to change. So I'm going to have to change, right? I'm going to have to, understand that I'm not going to get Rita. I do want a kid, but Rita's not the one who wants to have it. I was really liking this. I was like, this is very healthy, very adult, mature. We can find other people who match our wants. Like we can love someone else, right? That's a feasible thing in this life who may also want the things we want. That's just it's not where we landed though. Like it was a lost cause for something super fun and healthy and unique for literature, I would say.
This ties into the nature aspect, right? Like she doesn't need to biologically have a kid to have kids.
Yeah, yeah. Also true, honestly. I mean, especially given that she's like a caretaker, right? Like she's a medical professional.
Yeah, and we have a storyline with like Ben and Alice, weirdly enough, where they're at an orphanage. So it's like there are kids that are in need of homes.
Well, yeah, she like talks it away because she's like, "Well, I'm a single woman and I have a job. Like, I like can't take care of a kid."
Well, first of all, she probably could. I don't think
I
the
think she
orphanage would
could.
really
She kind
care.
of like also runs her own schedule. So
Yeah, she runs her schedule, and in this book, she starts to run Dawn's schedule.
right, she's
So
got
I
time.
think she's fine. But also, if she did want to romantically be with Daunt, they do not need to be having penetrative sex. I'm
No,
gonna say
true.
it.
It's a good point. Especially, yeah, if she's like, I don't want to bear a child. Great point, Taylor. She's like, I don't want to bear a child, but I want to have a child. Wow. I wish we had a solution for that. No, great point.
Crazy.
I think there's just a thread in this too that I don't like because it is just an encouragement of the idea of wearing someone down, right? Like I think that's effectively what this is without being as aggressive about it, right? Like I think it's more the story that wears Rita down than Daunt, but it is kind of that still. In that it just took enough times, it took enough considerations. Like I just have to keep asking, keep thinking about it, keep bringing it up, keep spending time together, and eventually she'll say yes. That's still what happens here.
Yeah, it could come across that way. I think the implication is just like she's seen some crazy shit and some crazy shit has happened, so why not take the risk? Like I think it's supposed to be like let's do this thing type of
Yeah,
vibe.
it's like, ah, fine, yeah. Let's try something new. Yeah.
Or like more so like the impossible has happened and so I can do this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess like I'll bring it back to the ground a little bit because I can see this still, right? Like I can see someone really wanting to have their own kid and having to kind of confront the fear of the biological things that come with that because people, do experience body dysmorphia when it comes to pregnancy. So it's like it's a valid fear to have, and like I can understand like a potential successful path of being like this is just a fear to process. It's just like Rita was so committed to it. That's like what makes me feel different about than this just being a fear to come over, is that she really was like set, like I'm not doing this, like it's not my path. And like, yeah, especially being someone who's a medical professional who still chooses to be a medical professional despite how I guess traumatic this might be in the full arc of her life. I feel like there's maybe a nice thing if she still got to do her part, right? And then maybe this is similar to something we were just talking about with raising kids, but she still has to do her part when it comes to kids being born, and like that could be her role when it comes to children. But there was such a good like completeness to the way she had already decided to live her life that's what makes me push back against this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's also like stuff we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I think, of like there's so many main characters and Rita is investigating, so there's a lot of plot going on, but like when it comes to this fear of hers, there just isn't like the arc just doesn't feel complete with where we end up, right? Because we have such an interesting backstory for her. Like her mother died in childbirth,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she was raised religiously and she had some kind of falling out with God. And I'm assuming it's about the similar theme. That's the impression I got. But like we don't really dive into it and there's no like really big reckoning with that feeling. And I don't know, like we have a girl without her parents that's being passed around, and we have Rita who was in a very similar position because her mother died, and it's just like we it's like her connection to the girl is passed off as motherhood
Mm,
in broad strokes, right? But there actually is a lot of similarity between them
that's such a good
that we
point.
just don't dive into.
It could have gone deeper.
It could have gone way deeper, and we could have had her like getting over this fear of like of childbirth because she's experiencing all of these impossible things. A girl literally came back to life. Like I do
Right.
think these things are mentioned toward the end of the book, but like there is something about sitting with these things for a while. The trouble with this book is that we don't get to sit with things
Mm-hmm.
enough. in regards to like the arcs of these characters.
It's kind of crazy because this book's not short. I mean, there's longer books, but it's not short, and yet I feel like it could be longer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just because some of this stuff could be fleshed out, and more things we'll talk about later on too. But some of this, yeah, like I definitely want to know more about what happened with this relationship with God, and there was a mention of it from Lily too that never comes back around, but Rita's does. Yeah, but it's just like a fact of life. I think there's enough good storytelling here happening for us to get more from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been talking a lot about biological children. It would behoove us to talk about the women in this book who are forced to have them. So let's get into it. Honestly, there's a lot of women in this book who are getting the shorthand, right? The kind of just either they're getting brushed over or the things that happen to them are just kind of entirely bad, or they're just like barely acknowledged. Like, for example, the little Margos. It's like we never get the only name I believe we know for a single child of Margot is Jonathan, the one boy.
Yeah, and he's the most special of
Yeah.
all of the children, right?
Great, the one special boy. All we care about is the boy child. Sounds a little bit like Victor's dad to me.
Mm-hmm.
What else? There's the brothel. I mean, just generally comes with mistreatment of women, but we see it directly with Robin's wife, who then also doesn't survive because she chose not to rather than continue doing what she was doing.
Also, that story was crazy. And like, not only was she used for money, but then also she ended up not as a prostitute. She was working in that house as a cleaner, and then Mrs. Evis, I believe her name was, just let a man into her room.
Yep.
Genuinely insane.
Yeah, I guess she's also presented as one of the evil. We've been talking about Robin and Victor, but she's kind of an evil character too.
She is. There's also weird. I don't know if you picked up on this, but the way she's described, she has like it's not a hook nose, but like her nose keeps being described as like a distinct feature of her face. I can't remember the exact word used, but the fact that it's her nose in particular that like defines her appearance, it's giving anti-Semitic a little bit.
Yeah, at the very least she's described as not pretty, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of goes with old school, like the villain is ugly, right? I think Victor gets that too, actually. Like he's also kind of described as not a pleasant looking dude.
Yeah, that could be its own topic of conversation.
Yeah, that's like a whole thing, but yeah, certainly the nose thing not great.
Mm-hmm. Other women in this book, it's the 1800s, but we basically have all the women in this book being abused or raped. And it's kind of casual, right? Like we mentioned Robin's wife. We have the butcher's wife, which is Ben's mom, is obviously being abused, miserable, that whole thing.
Yeah, so casual I almost forgot that one.
Yeah. It's just like the expectation. We have characters that end up having their lives like ruined for no reason. Ruby is a big example of that. She gets blamed for the whole Amelia thing and can't find work like anywhere else.
Oh, and then Susan, I think Robert's daughter, gets sliced by Robin.
Yeah, just
kind of
casually.
Violence. That's like the only role she has really in the story is to get sliced.
Mm-hmm. Alice presumably gets drowned in a river. Doesn't actually. She survives, but ends up having to be saved by Ben, which is that boy from the beginning. They even have to disguise Alice as a boy because it's safer that way.
Yeah, and that part kind of makes more contextual sense, right? Where they're like, well, like, literally, like if we're thinking time period and all that stuff. I point that out as a distinction though, because some of these don't necessarily feel like that. Like some of them do kind of just feel like, why is this written this way? Or like, why are we kind of brushing over some of these women? Or, why is it that so many women have these roles in the book?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think some of it is explainable by time period, but not all of it.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a time period for sure, but it's one of those examples of like Game of Thrones, right? It's like, does every female character need to be raped? It makes sense contextually, but doesn't need to be done, right? It's that kind of distinction here.
Right. Like, is that the assignment, right?
Yeah,
like, we don't really need. It doesn't have to. We don't have to go through that, right?
Mm-hmm. And this list is kind of a mix of like women being abused, but mainly it's like women suffering and having to endure for the sake of men, which I think is a very common theme sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it just happens to occur a lot in this book. Not so much abused, but used, I suppose, surprisingly. I put Maud on this list.
Yeah, I feel like it's warranted. Yeah. Yeah, kidnapped,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
forced to bear children before she is rehomed.
Yeah, that is the deal.
Yep.
I mean, that's also the only reason she survives, right? She's useful as a breeder.
Mm. Yeah, which then that just gets into a whole animal thing, but yeah.
Yeah. And then Maud and Constantine share this thing where they are therapists. One actually a therapist, but they still have to kind of help heal men.
At least I think Constantine is doing it as a job, so that helps a little bit, though like importantly her husband isn't doing that job.
Yeah, he gets to my knowledge, play professor at Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
Very prestigious.
Right.
Big one on this honorable mentions, we've mentioned her a bit, is Quietly's daughter.
Yeah.
And you might notice we have no name to call her.
Right.
She doesn't get one.
Yep. No voice throughout the book, right? She doesn't speak except that little bit that Jonathan maybe heard.
Yeah, which...
And it has to come through Jonathan.
Exactly. And then we mentioned this in the first part, like this story is being told about her, but she doesn't really have a say in anything, right? Like we're not sure why she's there. She keeps getting passed around.
Yeah, she's barely human.
Yeah, she is very much a device. She's like a catalyst to solve this crime, these multiple crimes, really.
Honestly, the mysticism around her dehumanizes her more, right? The
Mhm.
fact that she's presented as this kind of magical character with weird effects on people, right? Like, oh, like we can't see her reflection or what, stuff like that. Like she shows up funny in pictures, like all of these things that are like being like emphasized about her, like dehumanize her.
Yeah, and then we get to the end of the book and we don't actually know what happened to her. She could be just as dead as the 3 other girls that drowned.
Right,
Like
right.
we don't know.
Yeah, can I also just take a moment to say I was totally right that the Vaughns are irresponsible. Like they barely deserve to have children in their care because this has happened again. Like they lost a child again.
Yeah, how did she just disappeared, right? She
It's
just
like
went
she
down to the
effectively
river.
walks off. Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know if I were a parent who had experienced this. Let me not speak too out of turn, but I think this is reasonable. I would maybe not let my kid walk off like that to the river.
Yeah, considering how much help you have, like you're wealthy, right? Like nobody can look after her. Nobody knows where she went.
Yeah, I mean, and frankly, she was plucked out of a river, so I think we should be a little careful.
Yeah, fair. It's also like the river is flooding and it's like the winter solstice. We should definitely be careful.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, and like between that and they were considering window locks behavior, I just think maybe they're not cut out for parenthood.
Mm-hmm. This is also around the time where Helena is pregnant and they know this isn't Amelia, right? This is like they're still willing to raise her, but clearly this is not their daughter. And so it's like are they prioritizing their biological child?
Kid? Yeah, here we go again.
And also this child ends up being a son. I don't know. I don't know.
It's funny too because basically Mr. Vaughn's angle earlier in the book is like, well, if we just have another kid, that'll kind of replace the previous one, wouldn't it? Like he's like wanting to just move on and have another kid, and she'll be like, oh, like I'm obsessed with this kid. I am less upset about my lost kid. Well, I mean, here it is in action. They replace this child.
And they seem so fucking happy.
Yes, totally fine with it. And they're like, and we're not even to think about the fact that she's gone and could be found again. We're gonna move to New Zealand.
Yeah, no closure for this daughter.
Totally committed to just ending it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, those are a bunch of women.
Well, really, the list is not done yet, but those are all the brief ones. We have a kind of a more major one in Lily White. She's I would say been the target of many angles of horrible men.
Yeah, she seemed like a big deal at the beginning of similar to Rita, although definitely shafted way more in the second half. But yeah, she basically disappears from the narrative almost completely.
You would think she'd be one of the most talked about people when things are resolving like this, but I guess her story is simply shorter because like we talk so much about the Vaughns, they get so much stage time, but then like the Armstrongs too are, like these are the 3 stakeholders, right? The Armstrongs, the Vaughns, and Lily White, but we just barely hear from Lily White.
Yeah, she really is, in my opinion, she's really just there to bring in Victor. I mean, obviously he's tied to Robin, but we need kind of like an early tie-in, right? That's not so obvious. And then the whole Maud situation.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, which that's kind of just contributes more to it, right? Of like she is there to introduce the man to the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I think her character is interesting the way it is presented in the first half too, but in the second half it stuck out to me more of like she kind of the way she speaks and like the way she reacts to things. I don't know if it's that she's got like an intellectual disability or like just PTSD from all of the various many traumas she's experienced in her life, but like she almost speaks with kind of a childish tone, and like we know when Victor's talking to her about the water or whatever, like she trembles in fear, and that's like not the only time she trembles in fear. um and maybe it's just the way that she's being described by the author or the author's narrator, like that is putting that across, but to me there's kind of an implication that she's experiencing some sort of mental disability.
Yeah, I was definitely leaning more towards like PTSD. Like I think it's a mix of like stunted development because of the trauma she experienced so
Hmm.
young, and then also, to my knowledge, she is also uneducated, right?
Well, she's, I guess, good point on the child timeline there, because she's a runaway too, and like a real runaway. Like she, as far as I know, she does not come back or ever talk to her mom again or anything, 'cause she doesn't get the resolution to her story until late in this book.
Yeah, and that makes sense with earlier we knew she kind of disappeared. She ends up marrying Mr. White, and then Victor finds her again, right? There was that idea of him coming around again that was mentioned in the first part.
Yeah,
But yes, because she ran away because she thought she had killed her sister Anne, and she was just kind of living with that guilt. So I think, yeah, mentally she's probably stuck at basically that same age,
right.
and then the abuse she suffered from her stepfamily as well as from her husband, like there's just not a lot she could do, to be honest.
Yeah. The main reason I highlight this is less so to get an answer to what she is experiencing, and more just that it's an interesting combination to have her presented with this being identifiable, right? For us to be able to have this conversation, but she doesn't really get the stage time to explore it, right? Or like for us to know a little bit more about her. Like I feel like we know so little about her still. We know her story, but we don't know her. And so like to have this like element of her character where she almost feels, yeah, like she's representative is not the right word, like, but she is someone who has experienced PTSD in this book, so it kind of not unlike other characters in this book are representing a minority group, and like not really getting the full like it doesn't feel like they're getting the credit they need, right? Like to like really explore, if we're going to introduce those features, like we need to really flesh them out, is at least my personal opinion. So if we're going to introduce this feature of like she's experienced trauma, her behavior is affected by it, her life is affected by it, like I think she needs to get more stage time. I think otherwise like I don't know, maybe I don't want to say it otherwise because it's just going to be rude, but like I just don't like that.
Yeah, I feel like our assumptions of the first part were not necessarily that she was going to make a claim that it was Anne, but that her claim was going to be more known, right? Like the parson knows her, Rita knows her, people at the Swan know her. Like she's an outcast very clearly, right? She's an outlier within this whole group, but people know about her, right? Like she's not invisible. But she kind of gets treated that way for some reason. Like nobody really asks after her, nobody goes to visit her. Like because of her tie to Victor, there are ways in which she could have entered this narrative more, right?
Well, I'm also like, they really should have just been talking to her more, because, like, I mean, first of all, she should have gotten a heads up on this photo show thing. Like, this was just triggering for her, and like, just I don't know, they know her and they know that she's got some interest in what's going on here. Like, they also know she's a little bit sensitive, right? Like, at least Rita does. I think there could have been some more effort from the characters in the book, and they could have been written this way too, just to include her more in the story.
Yeah, like, yeah, her claim is completely dismissed, which makes sense. It doesn't make sense for this to be Anne, but the fact that she's so sure about it, like, I know mental health doesn't exist in the 1800s, but surely, surely we could, yeah, to your point, talk to her about it, right? Like,
But just, yeah, like at least help her out,
yeah, the person tries and he helps out a little bit, but like, classic man thing, like, he's not really putting in that much effort,
No, he
to
put
be
in like,
honest.
yeah, 2% of effort and was like, all right, well, we're done. We're good here. Like, we solved it.
Yeah. she like spills her guts about everything that happened, very traumatic, you know, she thinks she killed her sister, whatever, and she's like, okay, I need to go back home. And the parson is like, you should stay here. Rita's like, you should stay with the parson. And they like push a little bit, but in the end, she still does go home alone
Mm.
in connection with like clearly a psychopath, right?
Yeah.
Like they know about Victor at this point. Like it is not safe for Lily to be alone in any capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But that happens, and I was like, okay, this is what's going to happen at the end of the book. We are going to have Victor show up at the cottage. Lily's going to be there. She's going to confront him about the Anne stuff. He's going to try and attack her. She's going to like push him or like fight back or be upset, and she's going to accidentally kill him. And I was like, that's what's going to happen.
That'd be
right?
wild.
Surely,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was like, surely Lily White is going to get to confront her stepbrother. Instead, what happens is Victor is supposedly drowned in the river at this point, is what people believe. And so Lily has to go home alone. Oh, I guess that's why they're not worried about her being by herself. But the point is, like, she has to go home alone with the fear of, yeah, Victor may be drowned in the river, but that doesn't mean he's gone.
Right. I mean, look how many people are not gone.
Mostly for her because she's been haunted by Anne for 20 years,
True,
right? Like,
true.
she believes in ghosts. Like, 100% she believes in ghosts, right? So Victor dying doesn't mean anything to her, right? Like, that's not closure for her, right? Because even if it's just in nightmares and it's not real, she's going to think she's being haunted by his ghost, regardless. That's how we end this book. Because Victor, in the end, he doesn't drown the first time, but he definitely drowns the second time. And so Lily just kind of has to live with that.
She doesn't really get a good ending with that. Yeah, I mean, like, the Victor Robin ending is, like, weird, too. I mean, effectively, they just kind of kill themselves, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't like it. I'm like, you should have been hung from the gallows for what you did.
Yeah, it's, like, too convenient. I kind of thought there was going to be a confrontation with the girl. Like, when she goes missing, I was like, fuck, like, Victor's going to pick her up, and then, like, people are going to have to fight him to get her back. And, like, maybe that could have led to something like this, but...
Yeah. It's like, oh, it's so interesting. Just, like, the final confrontation with the bad guys of this book is basically handed off to a man to deal with, right? In two ways. In the Robert way and in the Quietly way.
Yeah,
like, they're both men.
True.
I mean, another character, I guess, that gets fucked, but not so much at the end of the book, but kind of the middle and the before this book happens, is Helena a little bit, because I don't know if we said it so plainly, but yeah, Amelia has been dead the entire time.
Yeah.
And Mr. Vaughn knew that.
Which kind of pissed me off, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh my gosh. Whoa.
I was upset about it.
Whoa. I actually really liked the scene of him kind of like talking through it with Constantine. I thought it was one of the better moments of the book. But yeah, then it was kind of like he really just hid this from his wife for 2 years.
Yeah, he was willing to tell Constantine before her.
Yeah, and a problem with the narrative, I guess, is we also don't get to see him tell her.
Yeah,
right?
What the heck? I was upset about that too, because suddenly she's just in on it. But I guess the implication is everything's okay.
Which is, I think, kind of a bullshit implication.
I agree. I'm telling you, this whole thing pisses me off.
Yeah, if I was Helena and my husband told me for 2 years he's kept the secret that my daughter's actually been dead, and now I'm supposed to just, stay married to him, have another kid with him?
Yeah.
I'd be like, fuck that shit. Are you kidding me?
This is just... It's absolutely nuts. So yes, he knows that she's dead, doesn't say anything, which, like, I don't know. He experienced a traumatic thing in the moment. So it's, for the beginning times of this, I can only provide so much judgment. But after 2 years, I can certainly provide a lot of judgment because yes, like this is so vital. And like, I'm providing judgment, especially because he is going out of his way, which Constantine calls him out for, going out of his way to find other ways to deal with it that isn't telling the truth, right? She's like, well, you came here to pay me to tell her that she's dead, and now you're going to pay someone else to not tell her that she's dead. Like, what's your deal here, right? Like he's willing to go through so many more hoops and have this conversation with his wife that he needs to have, especially because of his goals. His goal is to get his relationship back and to get his wife over it. And you know what's really hard to get over is like not knowing what happened to a dead person, right? Like not knowing that they are dead. Like this is there's a whole culture around funerals, right? Like we like need to, need is maybe a strong word, but it certainly would have been good for Helena here to acknowledge the death of her child, but she was never given that opportunity because the information was withheld by her own husband. So like everything he's whining about of like not being able to have access to Helena in the relationship, there was no shot if she's not given the opportunity to get the closure that you have. You are in a privileged situation here that you have not shared with your wife.
Yeah, and he was willing to basically steal is a strong word, but he was willing to keep this other girl that he clearly knew, not for magical reasons, he just clearly knew was not Amelia, and was willing to like have the law on his side possibly and pay money so that nobody would take her from them because Helena was, magically better.
Mm-hmm. Also with the orphanage context now, I'm like, if this is all it took, like he should have just gone to an orphanage and found a kid who looked vaguely like theirs.
I know. Oh my god.
Like, which would have probably been very unhealthy for that kid. But I mean, if that's what we're trying to solve, also like at the end of the day, what's this all for? Did he really like? And now this is me being skeptical, I'm sure, but like, did he really want his wife back, or was he just looking for a lay because she got pregnant immediately?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, and then okay, let me get more upset now because
Okay.
because on top of all of this, so yes, we don't get a scene where we get to see them kind of hash this out, right? And maybe because it doesn't matter, because then Mrs. Vaughn is like, well, really, like, it's my fault. She didn't say it in those words. She's like, it's my fault for believing it the whole time, right? Because like I knew, like secretly in my heart, I knew she was dead. I knew she was dead the whole time, and I was just like committed to this thing that I knew wasn't real, and like it's my fault for having this more enduring lie of the idea that she was alive that I was telling myself. And I'm like, this sucks. Like anything to prevent the men from having to take accountability. Like blame Mr. Vaughn for not letting you have closure. Like if you had told yourself that lie, but Mr. Vaughn hadn't told his lie, then you can blame yourself. Fine, I get it. But the context here is that Mr. Vaughn didn't tell you the information you needed to know to give you your best shot. And so to me, like whatever your lie to yourself was doesn't even matter because Mr. Vaughn's is the one that supersedes that. So it's just so upsetting to like not have a confrontation with him and like have him have some accountability, even if that doesn't mean they divorce and they're all upset all the time or whatever. Like she can feel these things she feels about like having convinced herself, but like still be like, bro, you lied to me for 2 years. We are literally married.
It's actually the only like good thing that happens is that they do get Amelia's bones, because if they had not gotten Amelia, like her body, and this had been a story of him lying, but then him also putting her body in the river and Helena never got to see her daughter again, I would be even more upset because he would have taken that opportunity away from her.
Yeah, fair point. One thing that was interesting about this too is the idea that the kid could have belonged to the river folks,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a great deal of this book where the river folks are blamed for missing children, right? Like they're like, oh, like maybe they took our daughter, right? Took the Vaughn's daughter. And not at one point, not in like most of the book, are they like, maybe this child we have taken is one of them. Like there's no like sense that, oh, us like upstanding, English folk or British folk, whoever they are, could have taken a river child. It only goes the other way because the river folk take things. I'm like, oh gosh. So like there's a bit of a representation problem going on here, and like that's emphasized by the word that it's actually used in place of folks here, in the book, which timeline and all that, but still doesn't come off well. And I think there's kind of a number of things in this book that, when I say I feel a little bit complicated about this book, there's some things in this book that give me some trouble.
Yeah. They had it in the beginning, and I was like, okay, we have a little bit of, some mysticism here. I get that fits the vibe, right? It's a weird vibe, but it fits the vibe. And then we got to the second half, and they bring it up again, and they're like, oh, the river people are here. Lock your doors. Bring in your potted plants. They'll take anything they can get their hands on. And I'm like, okay, this is a little much here. But yeah, the idea that these English folk don't usually have to lock their doors because they can trust each other. And it's like, well, you have a Robin and you have a Victor right
Yeah,
there. So what
totally,
are we really
totally.
doing?
Exactly,
Who do we
exactly.
really trust here? But yeah, it's just like casual racism just thrown in.
Totally, totally. And it doesn't keep it to one category too, because I talked a little bit about Lily, but I actually think there's a kind of a weird thing going on with Bess as far as like a representation thing, because Bess is a character who clearly has a physical disability.
Just two.
Am I forgetting something? She has the eye.
She has the eye and she has the like she has a limp.
Oh yes, right. Yeah, good point. And I think, we're talking about Lily like not getting that much stage time. I think that kind of is true for Bess a little bit too, but I think more of my concern about her is just her whole story, right? And like her story and the fact that this seems to be a trend in the book. Those two together, but like her story being kind of focused around being a victim of sexual assault, kind of due to the fact that she's a vulnerable person too, right? That like leads to her being targeted. So like there's that part of it, and then there's also the like magical eye thing I mentioned before, where there's like kind of superpower, supernatural ability ascribed to a person with a physical disability. Like it's been a trope we've seen before.
Yeah, we were concerned in the first part, mostly about Jonathan is what we were thinking of. But yeah, this does come up with Bess because she thinks her eye is magic. Well, the people in her family think her eye is magic. Rita obviously dismisses that idea.
Yeah, which is interesting too, because I'm like, okay, is the author kind of trying to be self-aware with Rita, right? Because she's our logic character of saying like, well, contextually people believe she's magical, maybe because they have this kind of bias of someone with a physical disability maybe having some other like supernatural ability, and then Rita's here to tell us like that, like, well, this is just people of the time, or like, like I'm trying to figure out if that's the author kind of giving us a heads up of like, don't worry, I know what's up.
Yeah, it's like this book is as a couple things we've mentioned, it's in a weird middle state of like the kind of fairy tale-esque atmosphere of the past being met with modern science, right? And logic.
Yeah.
And it's kind of going back and forth on that idea like the entire time. It just doesn't reach a conclusion where it's like, okay, we're entering into the modern era. Magic isn't real, right? Like it
Yeah,
doesn't definitively say
it
anything
doesn't get
like
there.
that.
Yeah.
It still kind of floats back and forth. So yeah, I can't tell if I'm supposed to be mad
You're
about
right.
all of the disabled
Exactly.
characters all having special abilities, right? Because I don't know if they're magic or not.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I think it's just weird. That's all. I don't know. Another thing with Bess too is like this whole relationship with Robert, and like first of all, I got upset because I'm like, I think Robert should have fired these dudes a lot sooner than he did, but it took someone getting sexually abused before he does. So that was just like frustrating to read, but not for the same reasons. At a certain point too, like I had this thought, oh, like it is a little weird that like we have these characters, we have one who has physical disabilities and we have one who is not the same race as everyone else in the area he is in, and those two end up together. It almost feels like default, which doesn't feel very nice either.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I was not feeling good about that, and I was like, is this book putting off things I don't like? But then that kind of gets acknowledged later down the line too, when Robin, being the pain in the ass he is like, oh, like of course, like the one black person and the one physically disabled person ended up together because no one else would marry them, right? So he's like naming the thing to like, and the fact that it's coming from that character kind of does change the angle a little bit of like, this is not a good point of view to have, right? But it takes so long to get there that I was like a little stewing about it for a while.
Yeah. It's not like it was a relationship born out of love, right? It's not like these two characters fell in love with each other and then got married.
It almost feels like he's like apologizing. Like this is like, here, take this marriage in exchange for the fact that I let this happen to you.
Yeah, it's Bess is at she's like at the mercy of the men around her, right? And so like a man has to come in and save her, basically.
Yeah, I think it's like the part of it that's it's acknowledging it, right? Just acknowledging that this is the time they live in. This is realistic, right? So like I think I get that, but
Yeah.
like there's just still something unsettling about it. And I think maybe like I'm focused on the wrong thing. Like maybe I shouldn't really be like reading this book in a way of like, should I just think it's hard for me to not think about when these sort of representation issues come up of like, if we're going to acknowledge that sort of context where things like this happen to characters that have these traits to them, like I don't know. I just feel like it needs to make it clear the angle it's going for, and it doesn't have to be like over preachy or anything, right? But I just what I don't want it to be is just a perpetuation of the same representations we've seen that have caused there to be a representation issue, right? So if we're going to acknowledge that this is the sort of thing that characters go through, I think we need to think about the greater context where that can't be all these characters are forever. So it's a fine line. Like it's not that you can't include characters experiencing racism and prejudice and abuse and assault and all these things, but there's it's part of a bigger conversation, and it needs to kind of acknowledge that it has that role.
Yeah, and I think the other side to this, maybe slightly opposite of what you said, I don't know. It's late for me. I'm sorry. Um, is you can have all these characters that are diverse, and you don't have to get into the social aspects of that,
Mm.
really.
Well, maybe they just don't all need to be suffering, though, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, we don't have to delve into it's like when you have a gay couple, right? Like, not all queer literature needs to be about homophobia, right?
Right.
Like, queer people can just exist normally in a space, and maybe it won't be realistic, but like, we're talking about fucking magic in this book. Like,
Mhm.
give me a break, right?
And I think it's just the amount of it too, right? Like it's this, but then yeah, it is the kind of like magical disability thing going on with her and Jonathan, and maybe with Quietly and his daughter, and there's just like the whole list. Joe, like having storytelling abilities and also experiencing chronic illness. Ruby's grandmother and the dragons. Like we have this whole list here of situations where it's like there's like implications about just about every character in this book that has a disability, and then we have our one minority, racial minority character as well. Like everyone's got something extra to it. There's not a character in this book who is just existing, who also has a disability or is a different race from the rest of the characters. So
Yeah, and with stuff we've already mentioned before, right? Like, they're not also given the time to really get into it. Like, how does Bess feel about Robin? Magic Eye aside, right?
right,
Like,
right.
that is a tense relationship. Like, does she ever feel guilty towards
Mm,
Robert, right? Like, the basis of their like, she has the magic eye that tells her Robert is a good person, but like, if this book was just about them, right? There's like the opportunity for them to grow closer because of how they're outcasted from society, right? Like, they have things in common, but we just kind of shove them together because of course they go together, and then Bess magically is like, "You're a good guy," and Robert's like, "I am a good guy." And it works out for them, right?
yeah,
And
they're
it's
like they actually like seem to be in love by the time we're in the story. So
right, and it's just like I would like that to not feel like I don't this feels like an arranged marriage.
right, right. I think there's something in this too of what you touched on a moment ago of like if there was deepness to this, right? Like if we dove a little bit more into like their relationship, some development, it would feel like it's not just about things that happen to them, right? Like it would feel like they're full people behind it. And maybe that's what we're missing. Like with Robert and Bess, we're missing the depth of relationship. We just kind of get fun facts about it, and we use the magical eye, but we don't really get inside of Bess's head, right? It's all kind of just flashy, showy, but it doesn't, get. We want the substance in order for this to feel okay. Like, because then I care a little bit less. Not that I don't care, but I care a little bit less about thinking about making taking a certain angle, or like acknowledging role, all those things I was talking about before of like context, right? If it's part of the story but there's more to it, then it just feels like an element of the fact that these are full people who have various experiences. But if it feels like a tool, that's where it starts to be a problem.
Hmm. I'd say for Bess and Jonathan, this is like the most important. Like, for Bess, it's yeah, the eye, right? She can say quite clearly, Robin's not a good person because of my eye. And it just becomes fact in the book, and Robert trusts it 100%. And then for Jonathan, his is interesting because if it's like a magical reason, the impression I got at the end of the book is it's actually true that he is a changeling. He can't tell the story the entire time, and then he tells the story of the girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's able to tell that one fully and completely. And the only reason I could see for that being the case is because it's the truth. Because Fae have this thing, depending, I guess, on what we're talking about here. But Fae usually can't lie,
Mhm.
right? Like they kind of have to spin a yarn a little bit, but
Right.
for the most part, they have to tell the truth, right? And so if Jonathan is a Fae or part Fae, depending on what the hell Joe had going on, because he's also kind of weird. But
Mhm.
if Jonathan is a Fae, then we can believe that the girl is Quietly's daughter because Jonathan wouldn't be able to lie about it,
Right,
right?
right.
So yeah, we're just using like their disabilities as like magical fact,
Yeah.
but also we're not ending this book saying magic is real. So
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know what any of it is for, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think he even said that this book had the potential of being magical realism in the first half, right? Like maybe it's trying to pull on those threads.
Yeah.
So for me, the things that kind of stick out about Robert that we haven't already addressed, well, we kind of have a little bit in the first half of this. There's the thing of him like speaking, and then like that solves everyone's prejudice about him. And so there's like this kind of weird alternation between this being a very like race conscious society and then suddenly colorblind because of class, I suppose, right? Is the interpretation there.
Mhm.
Again, though, like this is just kind of used as a way to like move along, right? Like you know, there's this kind of fear of among people around him when they see him, and then like once they see that he's well spoken, then like they never talk or think about race ever again, except for the farmers, right? But like the workers, but every other situation is just like, oh, like why even bother? Because like at this point now we're just gonna treat him like any other person.
Maybe people don't know this, but he does end up with Alice after Robin does his whole fair display, whatever the hell. And nobody like questions it, right? Like there's no murmurings of is this girl safe with him?
Yeah,
There's not even any questioning of I think we did mention this in the first part of like would this girl even be his grandchild if she's to my knowledge as white as like a porcelain doll?
right,
Like
right.
would people buy it? I don't really know. Nobody cares.
Well, and this is the
Like I
thing,
don't
right?
know.
Because it's like there's I'm supposed to be led to believe that all of this stuff happened, when he was like buying the farm and like all this stuff with the best rate, like all this stuff from the past. It's like this is still the 1800s, right? Like, and like also there's all these other prejudices we're seeing actively in this time, right? And like we still see that initial prejudice. And I'm supposed to buy that like the moment he speaks, all that prejudice is just out the door because he sounds high class.
Yeah, it's almost like the narrative. I don't want to say the author. It's almost like the narrative believes that, and this gets brought up actually multiple times by Robert, but like if you can put somebody at ease in a conversation, which he can do because of his education, then like yeah, you'll bypass their prejudice, right, or their racism, right?
Right. It's like a code switch thing, right? But that doesn't usually like solve racism.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Right.
the issue, right? Like that doesn't mean people aren't racist anymore,
Yeah,
right? Right?
yeah.
Like that kind of stuff takes time.
Hmm.
Yeah. For me, like we mentioned this in the first part, we were worried if like the race was even going to be a thing because Robin didn't seem to well, we thought Robin was like his child to be honest at first. And we were like maybe, their distance is created because of social status and like race and all this kind of stuff. Not really the case, I guess. Maybe a little bit because Robin thinks he's, royalty or whatever. But for me, when we got insight into Robert and the time he spent with like his two different families and like how that felt, I think it's supposed to give the impression of like how it feels to be mixed race, right? Like you're not enough of one side, you're not enough of the
Yeah.
other. But actually reading it, I more so got the impression of that class divide, right? Of like he's not he's the son of a servant, so he's not going to fit in with his father's side of the family. And he's a bastard at that, right? So he doesn't get to spend time with his siblings, right? He sees them once and then he never sees them again, right? And then for his mother's side of the family, he's allowed to be there, but there's still that divide. And then once the mom dies, when he offers the help with the funeral, the stepfather is like, we'll take care of it, Mr. Armstrong. Like, it feels like a class thing. rather than like a race thing, at least in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, right? Like it's just leaning into that more. But like, how do we accept that? Like, given his past, right? Like, I don't know. It's not like race problems don't exist in this book. Like, I can see like this being a like slight fantasy where like race doesn't really matter quite as much as class, right? But that is not true by the evidence of the book itself.
Yeah, I think my point more so is I don't think the issues of his race were done well.
Gotcha, gotcha,
Put flatly.
gotcha.
I think an attempt was made, but the way his family divide is described, the way he kind of tries to compare it to Robin's experience, like none of those were racial issues
Mm,
in my head. It was more like status
yeah,
and
I understand.
economical issues.
Like it was left out.
Yeah. And I mean, that's fine if you're like to my knowledge this is a white author, like if
Yeah, I actually just looked up
you
to
can't
check.
really write about these things,
Yeah,
then
there's a limit.
you can't really write about these things. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, then it's like you got to tread lightly, then, right? Like I don't know, like it's not like the book totally avoided those topics, and so that's why we're in this zone of it feeling weird because it'd be one thing if yeah, again, if we went into a fantasy world where we're not worrying so much about race and we are worrying more about class, fine. That's a totally acceptable choice. But the matter of the fact is, the book did get into race, and it didn't do it the full job.
Yeah.
Well, on that happy note, I think we've hit all of our topics.
Yeah.
So I think we can bring it to an end and get into ratings.
I'll go first. I feel like when I finished this book, I almost was like, this is a 4-star, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling the highs, you know?
I get it. Yeah.
But I think me being right about a book and me feeling clever, because I'm reading kind of a clever book. Like, I think this
Yeah,
book
I
is,
agree. I agree.
well put together. Um, I can't let that feeling overshadow all the things we just discussed. Um, and also it's like midnight, so I'm
I
out of my
know. I'm
mind.
so sorry for this.
It's okay. So I think I still like the book overall. I think I like the magical vibe. I'm kind of okay with the ambiguity, but I think that's because I think there's magic in this book and I'm willing to be a little whimsical about it. But yeah, I just kind of hate romance and
Yeah.
having children. And I feel like in the 3 years we've done this podcast, I'm just like so over it.
Yeah. I get it.
Even more and more every time. I'm discovering new things about myself as we go on. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with a nice 3. I liked it, but like I've come down from the high. It's not a 4. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I feel that strongly, honestly, where I finished the book and I was like, all right, that was an adventure. The second half really like I was in it. Like I said, it's once it became more of the plot book, right? I just that's up my speed. It felt like a mystery. I love a mystery. Like it was just really nice. But yeah, similarly, there's like all these things holding me back. It almost makes me feel like, um, back once upon a time, we used to do marching band, and we used to get two kind of sub scores in each category, right? Where one was kind of how well we did the thing, our performance, but the other was kind of like how difficult was the thing we set out to do. And I almost feel like that's where I feel like there's two different numbers here because I think this kind of set a high bar, right? In that it puts this whole story together over kind of a long period of time. There's all this setup, but it's kind of interesting and like good setting. But but I did feel a little slow. But overall, I think it was good. And then the second half was like really driven. Like I was really bought into the story itself, even if some of the characters were a little shallow, right? Like, but overall, I felt good about it. So I'm like, I feel like it shot high, but it maybe fell short, and that's the issue I'm having. Where like I don't want to penalize it because there's other books I would give a 2 for having similar issues, but like they didn't try that hard either. Like this book kind of tried hard and in many ways was successful. It's just some of these things that I just personally care about that bother me, and that's holding me back. It's maybe the issue with a single dimension scale where it's just out of 5 stars, right? Where it's like I'm trying to account for both of these things, but it's hard to because they kind of are about different facets of the book. So like I almost feel like this, yeah, storyline wise, like I do want to give it a 4, and kind of everything else wise, I want to give it a 2. So, um, but it I could just average that and say a 3. It feels disingenuous still because I just feel like it's better than a lot of 3s, and so I think I'll give it the extra point 0.5. I'd really love to see some stats on how many times I've given something a 0.5 score, honestly, but I'm gonna give it a 3.5 because I do think it just edges out like an average book. Like I think it is more interesting than that. I was more pulled in by it, but it's the real penalty here of it not being higher is coming from not successfully achieving all the things it set out to do.
Mm-hmm. I would say, yeah, the main thing it seemed to care about is family and traditional values. So,
yeah, which that kind of bothers me a little bit too. That's fair.
Yeah, in my head, I feel like it accomplished exactly what it wanted to accomplish.
Interesting.
I just don't agree with the theme of the book, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's fair too, right? Like the reading of like, well, this, yeah, the things that it's focused on weren't the race, it wasn't the minority representation, and that's why those things are not great. So I see that too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just it doesn't accomplish all of the things it approaches, right? Like that it includes.
For sure. But as always, we do need that good vibe.
Yes, gotta end on a good vibe.
I think for my good vibe, damn, what if I just complimented myself? I'm kidding.
My good vibe is was able to predict the book. Is that where that was going?
Yeah. I guess I'll give 2, and if I steal one from you, all the better. Keep thinking. I think this book, it feels very expository. I was really concerned about that in the first part, because I was like, I don't know if this is gonna matter. Like, we're talking about pigs, like you were skimming over the pigs, and I was like, okay, but actually the pigs matter, right? So like, the actual storytelling of this book is very well done, right? Like the fact that I was able to predict isn't because I'm good. I mean, I am, but like also this book is just very well put together, right? Like you're able to come to those conclusions if you're paying attention. So that for sure is a good vibe. The other slightly small good vibe I want to give, just because of personal preference, I fucking love a boatman. Yeah. I love a ferryman. I love crossing a river and reaching the underworld. That's my vibe. So the fact that we get quietly and we eventually get his daughter doing that job as well, I just love that shit.
Yeah, very fair. Yeah, for some reason that brought to mind a sort of smaller good vibe that I think won't be my main one, but a small one is shout out to Jonathan. Love the name.
So we're both just narcissists today. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, exactly. We're taking a page out of Robin's book, I think for me, I've said it a couple of times, so sorry that this is a bit repetitive, but like I liked the mystery vibe. I was expecting a mystery in that we're like, okay, like who gets claimed to these girls, but like by the time halfway comes around, I wasn't really expecting that anymore. I was definitely expecting more like fantasy and historical fiction vibes, and I just really liked that mystery was kind of built in. And I think the most impressive thing is that mystery isn't totally resolved. Some of it is, but not all of it is. And I still liked it, and I think that's tough to do, tough to execute well. So I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, I like that we got a character that was like actually investigating as well. That's always the concern, isn't it, with a mystery? Is the information just gonna like fall into their lap, or are they actually gonna work for it?
Yeah, good point.
But yeah, overall we complained a lot. But I still think at the end we had a good time with this book.
It's a very fruitful discussion, and you know what, the ratings still, they kind of leaned positive, so
for sure, yeah. But yeah, what are we reading next time, I guess?
Yeah, next time we are reading She's Too Pretty to Burn by Wendy Hurd, up to, but not including chapter 22, which is titled Veronica, but that's just a character name. A lot of them are titled Veronica.
Mm-hmm. I actually was the one to find this book, and I think I had this on our list since before this podcast started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've been wanting to read it for a very long time. And finally, we're doing it.
Come.
Yep. It's a summer book, so obviously we're reading it in the summer. It's also a sapphic book.
Nice. We had to make up for June.
For sure, yeah. And this one I think is also, I don't know how much of a mystery it is. It might be more thriller. But apparently this one's also about photography.
Oh, all right. Some fun connection.
That makes sense because I do know this was inspired by, I don't know how much, but The Picture of Dorian Gray. I don't know how familiar you are with that story.
Actually, very little.
Okay. Maybe leave it that way. It might be more fun.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, so there's some girls possibly falling in love, some photography, some murder, more drowning. I'm seeing the word drowning and oh my god. Okay.
We're no strangers to drowning in books on this podcast.
For sure, for some reason. But if you have any thoughts and theories about Once Upon a River or She's Too Pretty to Burn, all of the socials are in the description.
And please like, subscribe, rate 5 stars, etc. on the podcast app of your choice. And thank you for listening.
Good night.